Talking to myself again, but it's the only way you're ever gonna learn. You look back and it's all in the past. I'm dwelling on that.
Morning all, welcome to NUFC Matters with me, Steve Wraith, and delighted to be joined by Mick Lowes again. Hiya Mick, how are you?
Good, Steve, you?
Yeah, very good, mate. Very good. And another week where we start the show talking about another win and another comprehensive win down at Brentford, 2-0 win, albeit against 10 men. VAR, of course, working in our favour again. But what was your take on last week's game first, Mick?
I just thought it was a very, very, very professional performance. You know, I think we talked about it over the weekend. And obviously, the key to it was the sending off. You know, 11 minutes into a game, the opposition are down to 10 men. As long as you do it properly, as long as you set your stall out, they did that. Ryan Fraser was fantastic on that left-hand side because obviously the width that you're then enabled to by having a man over, we just caused them all sorts of problems. I know Brentford aren't great or weren't great before the game. They'd lost 7 straight, just about, and they look in peril. They look in peril for me, Brentford. But as far as Newcastle are concerned, it was just a really, really solid performance. So, you know, in many ways, because we talked about, let's hope it's not a banana skin. Let's hope it's not one of these where, you know, Newcastle just let their stall down and let their standards slip. You know, they just did the job properly. So in much the same way that they got a really good job against West Ham United and a decent draw against West Ham away from home, they did exactly the same again. All right, it was the Brentford Community Stadium, but it was just a proper job. It was a proper job. I mean, it was just more evidence of the confidence that is absolutely coursing through a team which 6 weeks ago was on its knees. It's amazing the turnaround.
It is. It's a massive turnaround, and you know the new signings as I've said in the past, Mick, have made a big difference. But you know the other players have started to to raise their game. And Kraft last week, you know, he played a lot better. He got a bit of criticism at West Ham for conceding the free kick, which led to the goal. But
I said that. Yeah,
he did play a lot better, didn't he?
He did, and I think this is part and parcel of, and we said this about the January transfer window. About getting proper players in rather than perfect players. And what happens is when you get proper players into a football club and proper players into a squad, it not only helps you in terms of the quality of the squad that you've got, it also gives a kick up the backside to everybody else. So, you know, Jamal Lascelles is suddenly thinking, hang on a minute, when do I get back in the side? Left back is thinking, when do I get back in the side? Kieran Trippier is injured, of course, but all of a sudden, Emil Kreft has got himself an opportunity to put his stall out there, to put his product out there, and say to Eddie Howe, you know, maybe there's a good player there. Maybe there is a good player. So it really is an initiative, a product for the rest of the side to look at and think to themselves, you know, we're a good team, we're a good squad. You know, you've got Bruno trying to jump in at the bit to get into. He can't get into midfield. So, you know, for the likes of them, the one thing I would say about, and I think Eddie Howe made the point in his press conference yesterday, I think we have to be conscious of the fact that a big part of this run of 7 games unbeaten has been down to the fact that the January transfer window was very, very useful. The ownership were a godsend, you know, to send 90+ million pounds. Yes, they've not been superstars with the exception maybe of Bruno. But as I said there earlier, they've been proper players. They've helped us. They've helped other players around us for the likes of Emil Kreft, and particularly defensively, whereas I kept banging on, and I still maintain that we do need 1, maybe 2 real top quality centre backs. At this minute in time, you have to keep reminding yourself. I know Kieran Trippier is now injured long term, but we signed 3 of a back 4 in January, which have turned out to be very good buys. Trippier and Target as fullbacks, and then Dan Burn as a centre back. So we've collected 3 of our back 4. So it's no great conscience if you get it right. Suddenly, we've only conceded 4 of our last 7 games, and that is a huge part. And actually, ironically, I was thinking about it the other day. A team and a squad which 6 months ago, 4 months ago, 3 months ago, 2 months ago, the only thing we could do to save our lives was try and score 2 and 3, because we'll always concede 1 and 2. All of a sudden now, we're a team who are tight. We're only conceding 0s and 1s and 2 at most, but we can't score goals all of a sudden. So we need Chris Wood. We need an ASM. We need Ryan Fraser to chip in. With Joe Willock started again, of course. Joelinton got a goal against Brentford. But suddenly the need, believe it or not, for Newcastle, especially on games like today when you're against Brighton, who are tight, they've only won twice away from home all season. We need to try and create goals today. We need to score 1 or 2 goals today. So it would be interesting to see how we change. We've changed as a mentality, as a football club. We've gone from literally one extreme to the other. We've gone from cavalier and conceding to suddenly being tight, being responsible as a back 4, but just can't score goals at the other end openly.
How important has Joelinton been to this turnaround? I mean, there was that wonderful moment last weekend where he walked over to he ran to the fans and celebrated when he scored. But then at the end, he was the last man on the pitch for about 5 minutes, just clapping, walking backwards towards the dressing room, clapping and cheering, the fans, thanking them for the support. I mean, it's a monumental turnaround. I don't think I've seen a turnaround in a player like this ever, Mick.
I completely agree. And I've said it 2 or 3 times, I've said it before that hundreds of times. I just couldn't see him. I couldn't see a player. I don't know what was going on. I don't know where the 40 million came from. It's not his fault that 40 million was paid, but somebody somewhere decided to pay it. As a football club, we decided to pay it. But either way, and maybe it did do him. It didn't do him any good. And certainly, the pressure of paying that amount of money may have been an issue. But at the end of the day, the fella just never looked like a footballer. All of a sudden, now, is it down to the fact that he's moved from one position to another position? I'm not 100% sure about that. I'm not 100% sure that once upon a time he was a striker and now he's a midfield player. I don't think he's a bog standard box to box midfield player. But what he does and what he's doing at this minute in time is putting a shift in. He's working hard. He's getting about the game. He's getting about the pitch. He scored a really, really good goal, a really good header against Brentford. But it is amazing, and it's the word that I talked about earlier. And it's not just about football. It's about sport in general. It's about life in football, Steve. Confidence. If you are confident, if you are happy, if you are smiling, if you feel like you're gonna set your stall out and be the best that you can be, then you are a completely different human being to the one that you are moping around, that you are feeling sorry for yourself, that you felt that somebody was doing you a wrong. Sometimes it wasn't right. You didn't want to be there. All of the things that Joelinton felt like he wanted to be once upon a time, all of a sudden now, that word confidence. And not only just him either. Joe Willock has got his confidence back. Dan Burn has come in, hit the ball running, looked like a confident player. I thought, to be honest with you, I thought Dan Burn could take him or leave him. But just the fact that he's come in and he's dictated and he's talked to people, and he's become the leader and one or two leaders that we never had. The mentality about that football club, Never mind the physical side of it. Never mind the footballing side of it. Never mind any tactically and possession and stats. Call it whatever you will that Eddie Howe and his staff have got. The biggest thing of all is mentality. They have sorted out the heads of these players.
I have, certainly have. Okay, as always, we're happy to take your questions. Quite a few coming in this morning, Mick, so we'll go with them. Some of them will test your knowledge. Some of them will just want your opinion. Geordie Tubalay says, good morning, Steve and Mick. I hope you're both well. Question for Mick. What's the best game that you've seen live at St James's Park and why? And who is Mick's all-time favourite footballer in the world?
Oh, dear me. That's thrown. I mean, there's one thrown at me. Best. Was it best live at St James's? Was it?
Yeah, best live game.
Best.
Yeah.
I suppose best live. Oh, you see, I've got all bloody flustered by this.
Yeah, yeah.
I suppose best side at best game live at St James's would probably have to be Barcelona. I mean, it just because of every nature and everything about it would seem like the obvious one. So maybe the Barcelona. Although if I thought about it carefully, I'd probably come up with alternatives. Manchester United, of course. It's either down to the Man U 5. Or the Barcelona Champions League in terms of the best. What was the best player or favorite player?
Yeah, in the world.
Favorite player in the world. All right, then I'll really throw one out there. My favorite player of the world as a 12-year-old, 13, 14-year-old boy was a fella called Duncan McKenzie, who was Nottingham Forest. Went on to play for Anderlecht. Went on to play for Everton. As a kid. I loved Duncan McKenzie. There you go, Duncan McKenzie.
There you go. Hope that answer suits you. Graham says need 3 points today and have a great run, no doubt. However, going to be tricky is if honest we don't score, lads. That said, I would love Wood to score. We'll look at that towards the back end of the game. Graham again says Brighton are a decent despite decent run, as yet haven't beaten them in the Premier League. Would Mick go unchanged? Well, look, we'll come to that now. You've asked 2 questions about Graham. I mean, I can't see ASM getting back in today. He was training yesterday. He hasn't really trained all week. I think he'll go unchanged, Eddie Howe, today.
I think it's almost certain. I mean, I cannot believe for a moment that Alan St-Maximin is anywhere near ready to start a game. But I think, as you say, even if he was fit, even if he'd played for the last week, even if he'd played the last 10 days, I don't think he can start the game. We've talked about loyalty. We've talked about the fact that he's got a good thing going at the minute, Eddie Howe. It would be wrong to rip up the 11 who've done so well for the last 7 games. So I don't see ASM getting anywhere near. What will be of interest is if he's on the bench, if he's available, if he's in the squad. If he's in the squad, then obviously that gives you an option, and it's a nice option to have, especially at home games against a team like Brighton, who, as mentioned there, despite the fact that their recent record is poor, they've won only 1 of their last 8 games. But to contract to that is the fact that they've only lost twice away from home all season. They lost to Villa, they lost at Manchester United. And the alarming stat is, which I think one of the mentions made there, is that Newcastle have never beaten them in the Premier League. Never beaten them in the Premier League. I think it's something like 8 games. Yes, we beat them in the Championship. Yes, we've beaten them in the FA Cup. But then you have to go back beyond the 90s onwards. And in fact, funnily enough, here's a one for you. I dug out the other day. Well, what is it today? March the 5th today, I think it is. March the 5th, 2022, exactly 30 years ago, on the 7th of March, that's Monday, 2 days' time, the 7th of March, 1992, who played who at St James's Park? Newcastle United against Brighton and Hove Albion, and Brighton won 1-0. And that was with KK. That was that terrible, torturous end of 91-92 season when we were threatened with going back into the old 3rd division, and Mark Gayle, there's a name for you, won the only goal of the game against Brighton. but the Newcastle game that, if I remember, was Tommy Wright in goal. I think right back was Matty Appleby. Centre backs were Killer, Kevin Scott. Left back was Mark Stimpson. Wide were Kevin Sheedy left hand side, Stevie Watson right hand side, Kevin Brock in the middle, Liam O'Brien in the middle, and I tell you who was up front: Gavin Peacock and David Kelly. There you go. There's the 11.
Brilliant.
Almost exactly 30 years ago in 2 days' time.
Yeah, that's absolutely fantastic. That's the kind of memories that I've got as well. The good old days.
It was, basically it was shite.
Big Cell says, why not give Gayle some minutes to show if he can offer something different to Wood and also put some pressure on him? We're talking about competition for places. Well, that's a great idea, I guess. It's a good suggestion.
It's a great idea, but it's a great idea that everybody has contemplated for the last 70,000 years, and nobody can work out whether we should or whether we shouldn't. There's been different managers, there's been different thoughts. What is the enigma? What is the whole Dwight Gayle situation? I don't get it. I've talked to you many times here about, I love the thought of getting into the heads of managers. But even managers can't get into the heads, seemingly, of Dwight Gayle. He the lad himself, sometimes you think he wants to be a player, then other times he doesn't seem to want to be a player. 1 minute he looks a player, other times he doesn't look a player. They're trying to get your head around Dwight Gayle is almost nearly impossible. And I'll tell you what, once upon a time, Steve, you could almost go with it. You could almost go with it. 10 years ago in football, 20 years ago in football, definitely, maybe even 5 years ago in football, you could throw somebody in and you could say to yourself, do you know what it is? 70 minutes, this isn't working, get rid of it. Nowadays, almost from minute one of a game, you have to be at it. You have to be ready. You cannot afford to just run the problem of having a player who is just obsolete from day one. I think that's why we had this is why it's amazing the way that Joelinton has gone from there's an argument for you. Could Dwight Gayle become what Dwight Gayle used to be in the way that Joelinton has become the player that Joelinton once was? I don't know. I agree with you, because the difference between Joelinton and Dwight Gayle to a degree is that we've seen enough evidence of Dwight Gayle over the years, not necessarily at Premier League, but certainly at Championship level, and every now and then in the Premier League. The kid looks like he's got goals in him. He looks like he's got goals in him. I remember I got shot down here, and I was probably right in so much as I think I probably got my stats wrong. I was probably a bit, I don't know. But if you remember the day that Chris Wood signed, I think I said, I don't think there's a huge difference between Chris Wood and Dwight Gayle. And if you look at their stats, if you look at their goals, if you look at their games over the years, there's not an awful lot in it. But somebody quite rightly got me reminded that actually more of Premier League goals have been scored by Chris Wood than Dwight Gayle. But there's not an awful lot in it. So I can see what you're saying, but I just think that ship has sailed, Steve. I just think we can't keep doing it. We can't keep saying, okay, give him a go, and it just doesn't happen. You'd rather have somebody like Chris Wood, who at least will look like he's putting it in there. He looks like he flick on here, flick on there, do this, do that. Might be, at least he looks like he's working for the team. He's working his socks off. I don't think we ever see that with Dwight Gayle. I don't know what's happening with Dwight Gayle, and as a result, I don't think I would at this minute in time. I wouldn't touch anybody I wouldn't touch him with a barge pole, to be honest with you.
Slightly off topic, boxing. I know you're a boxing man like me. And Paul Gibson was a little bit gutted last weekend. Says, good morning, gents. I'm still trying to get over poor Jack Catterall being robbed. Slightly worse for me, as I had 20 quid on the guy.
Yeah.
It's funny enough, because this is still the topic of conversation in the gym where I go, Mick. People just cannot believe it. They cannot believe it. And that's what gets boxing a bad name.
Yeah. I didn't see it. But I'll tell you what I did see. A mate of mine, Steve Lillis, who's been a good boxing man for years and years. He worked with Box Nation. He's worked with Frank Warren for a lot of years, worked for the News of the World for a lot of years, and I haven't seen him for about 15, 20 years. And we met up on Tuesday, just talking about, he was here in my neck of the woods here, filming with a young boxer here in Nottinghamshire, who's actually got a show tonight at the showground in Newark. And he was talking about that fight and just saying it was like the bad old days. You know, it was like the days where, hang on, that, no, you can't do that. So and I think we said it about, I think we've said it in the past, haven't we? I think we talked about the Dillian White fight, saying the good thing about that is that they will go toe to toe, the pair of them, and they will, with Fury, have a real proper, hopefully have a proper decent fight. But as you say, last Saturday, by all accounts, an absolute atrocity, and it doesn't help the sport. Steve was saying last on Tuesday, it just doesn't help the sport, and it doesn't help the reputation of the sport either. How they get away with it, I don't know. I mean, maybe VAR should be introduced. I don't know.
It's a classic. Still winning without Trippier. The team spirit is fantastic. I think I love Eddie Howe, says Paul Gibson, which is good. Mad Mark on Gayle says, he says 3 managers in a row haven't trusted Gayle. He must not be applying himself in training to force his way into the team, and he needs to be sold in the summer. Chris Quinn seems to have a complaint. I think you should address it to the other people, not us. Lost out the tickets for the match on BBC Radio Newcastle yesterday to Ian from Felling. I was second in the queue for the question. I'm looking forward to seeing Wood score his first on Match of the Day. Sorry to hear about that, mate. Better luck next time. Yeah. Colin just says, morning, lads. I'm worried about today's game with Brighton being our bogey team. In my opinion, a win is huge. I would agree. I'm going to ask you a question myself. Dan Burn, of course, came from Brighton. Would you give him the captaincy today, Mick?
Yeah, I see where those things come from on occasions. I know there's a level of sentimentality about it. At the same time, when you bear in mind that back in the day when, even before you were an age you were, and I had ages before I did, a centre back was more often than not was your captain, wasn't he? You play your centre back. Bobby Moore played at centre back. Invariably, centre backs played at football because they could see that the whole picture. They dictated. They tend to be big, strong, and they tend to be ideal sort of candidates. I know we had the Alan Shearers of this world, etc., etc. But centre backs were invariably captains for football teams. The existing one that we have at the minute is Jamal Lascelles. Now, going back to what we said about ASM not getting back into the side today, I can't imagine for a moment Jamal Lascelles will get back in the side today. So you're looking at possibilities. John Joe Shelvey, Kieran Trippier, they've both been used. I think my thought of it would be, I think it's unnecessary. It's unnecessary. I think what you've got is a situation today with Dan Burn where he just wants to concentrate because he has distractions. These are people he knows, people he knew very recently, people who, he'll have to talk to. Brighton and Hove Albion, their staff, their owners, everybody will be there. They'll all be, Dan, how are you getting on? Well done, Dan. There's a lot of camaraderie in football. He'll see players who'll wind him up. He'll see other players who'll cajole him. He'll see other players who'll have a laugh with him. He'll have lots and lots of distractions. I think if it was down to me, the last thing I would want was to give him the armband as well, to put an extra little bit of pressure on it and just let him concentrate today on doing what he's been doing so far. And that's been solid. He's been absolutely solid. He's been a good linchpin. He's been a good talker for Fabian Schär. He's been a good talker for his fullbacks. Let's let him carry on. You don't need anything unnecessary like giving him the token gesture of the armband today to be the captaincy against his former club, Brighton and Hove Albion. Just let Dan Burn carry on what Dan Burn is doing. And what's noticeable as well is that, and I talked about Brighton's recent form, they've won only one of their last 8. Now, that has to tell you something, doesn't it? That has to tell you that on top of everything else, their form has dipped when one of their centre-backs has left and gone to Newcastle United. So Dan Burn looks like he's been a bit of a blow for Brighton and Hove Albion. But in terms of today, just let him carry on. Just let Eddie Howe, we talked about the changing man. Let the changing man stop changing, keep non-changing, keep playing his team, keep steady away, and hopefully win the game today. Because when you think about the away games that have gone coming, what you would love to do on a day like today is get one final one out of the bag at home, make it 8 games unbeaten, hopefully with a win as well. Go to 28 points. You're in a big place then. Then you can worry about games away at Southampton, away at Chelsea, which are going to be awfully more difficult than these recent games that we've had. So today is really important, and I think Dan Burn as captain is unnecessary.
Yeah, okay, all about opinions. I don't think Murphy did enough last week, says Guy Brush. I'm hoping for a change in shape. 4-2-3-1 and Bruno getting his start. There it is again, Bruno getting his start. Lots of people chomping at the bit. He had half an hour last week, Mick. He did impress people, certainly did. But I think, I think it's unfair, at this moment in time to pick out players. I know people will. Murphy did okay. I was at the game. Yeah. I watched him. It was a good team performance.
And what Newcastle are doing more than any at this minute in time, Steve, what they're doing more than anything at this minute in time is being hard to beat. They're being hard for other teams to beat them. That's what they are. That's at this minute in time, our number one priority is not to lose games of football, whether people like it or not. Yes, it's 7 games. Yes, it's the first time since 11 years in the Premier League that Newcastle have won 7 unbeaten. Hope for today it will be 8 unbeaten. But that run has been based on one thing, and that's about not losing. And at this minute in time, whether we like it or not, Murphy is probably a better bet than Bruno at this minute in time in terms of trying not to lose the game rather than win it. What you want, and I talked about it last week, when he's got a run of maybe, what is it, 4 in 13 games or 5 in 15 games, whatever it is, there was every suggestion there that I think needs must. I think he's going to have to start a game with Bruno and have a look at Bruno. And I think he said in his press conference yesterday, Eddie Howe, once he gets in there, he might well stay in there. He may well. At this minute in time, we don't know. But what we do need and what we will need sooner or later is a team that is settled, a team that is confident, and it is confident now, but also a team that isn't worried about relegation, isn't looking over its corner. It's not looking at the possibility of being thrown out and back into the Championship. And once they're comfortable, then you start releasing the Brunos of this world. Then you think about the ASMs. Then you maybe change your formation slightly. But at this minute in time, the priority is not to lose. It's to pick up a point. It's to pick up 3 points. It's to pick up enough until we're safe. Once we're safe, then Bruno's ready to go. He's 24 years of age. He's got plenty of time ahead of him. He's just at this minute in time acclimatizing. Yes, he's chomping at the bit. Yes, I'm sure he's knocking on Eddie Howe's door saying, come on. And he will be, as I mentioned last week, he'll have mates around him saying, Bruno, what are you doing? You went to Newcastle, you went to a big club, you're in the Premiership, why aren't you playing? He's going to be wanting to play the game. But at this minute in time, he's going to have to wait and then once it's ready to go, then he'll go.
Yeah, I agree. Looking forward to seeing him flourish at Newcastle. Is definitely a great player in there. Big shout out to our sponsor, Spider VPN, for all your internet security. Google Spider VPN. They are the boys to trust. Come up at the top of the Google search list. Thanks to skipsandbins.com. Telephone 0800 25 45 25 3. Email inquiries at skipsandbins.com. Website www.skipsandbins.com. Easy contract free and pay as you go waste collection. Thanks also to L&G Family Funeral Directors, 01913897245, and to Garden of Healing Dispensary, CBD hemp and cannabinoid specialists, www.thegohd.com. Thanks to Arcot Interiors. You can find them on Heaton Road, and they are the boys to trust with kitchen interiors. Come up at the top of the Google search list as well. Thanks to qtechshop.co.uk, the makers of pool tables and snooker tables in Wallsend, Newcastle. Thanks also to Cleekai, and you can find Cleekai at clearun.game, Google Play or App Store. Meet the new game over screen, drop into a Clearun device near you. Thanks to Jab Signature and thanks to Media Arts for doing all of our video work. If you want to subscribe to the channel, click Newcastle Legends logo on the bottom right-hand corner and you can subscribe for free. Hit the thumb up to like the video, click share to your social media, and drop into the comments box to speak to like-minded Newcastle fans or to pose a question. We're also available as a podcast on iTunes and Spotify and other podcast providers. Usually goes up a day after the broadcast. If you want to join the cult, then you can get a pen, a cup, a scarf, and a membership card. And you just need to hover your phone over this QR code, put your camera on, and it'll take you straight to the website, NUFCmatters.com, and you can join the cult, be taking part in the monthly draw. And we've got a special offer coming up for cult members. Keep an eye on your inboxes. We have an afternoon with Super Mac Gibbo and Holly Blades coming up at the Marlborough Social Club, and all members will be getting a special offer through the email service from John at QTech. I'm at the Dog and Parrot at 1 o'clock today with Super Mac. Come in and see us. It's free. Kids are welcome. Good beer, good food, good crack, and a pool table as well. And Malcolm's opinion on the game at 1 o'clock, and Malcolm's reflection on the game round about 5:30. So get yourself in. The food bank will be over the road at Gallagher today, collecting, and this is the last match for a considerable amount of time. We've got 3 away games coming up. So if you are going to donate food or cash, get yourself up there today. Steve Hasty and the gang will be across the road from what I'm hoping will be called Shearer's Bar in the next couple of weeks. And NUFC fans, foodbank.co.uk is the website where you can go and make a virtual donation, no matter where you are in the world. Well worth doing that. And don't forget as well, we have the end of season due, NUFC Matters Summer Party, 17th of June, and that will be at the Irish Centre. We've got a tribute act, Viva Morrissey on, just a nice way to get together in the summer. Tickets available on Groupon and Voucher for about £7.50. If you want to help break a world record, join me on the Firewalk on the 14th of May. wrfirewalk.co.uk is the website to register. If you want to join my team, then join Team Wraith by entering the code NUFCM at checkout. Don't forget, on the website, got all kinds of t-shirts, including these wonderful He's Only Got Little Arms t-shirts, which we're getting people to wear at the Everton game. So get yourself on. And don't forget, for the food bank, we have this rather snazzy shirt, which I can imagine Mick wearing, with Alan St. Maximin on. The current bid on that's £150. All proceeds go to the food bank. Alan will sign that as well, which is great. Thank you very much for him for agreeing to do that. And that is all proceeds to the food bank. It's on my Twitter at Steve Wraith. So get yourself bidding on that. Well worth entering. Okay, second half of the show. Back onto the comments. And we've got a couple of historical ones again. Tom's just saying, do you ever speak to ex-players like Ket Spire, Thomason or Andreas Anderson? He says, you never hear anything from these people these days. Do you ever keep in touch with any of them? I know you keep in touch with lots of ex-players, but
funnily enough, I spoke to a couple through the week. I spoke to Andy Griffin, who I hadn't seen for a little while, who I really did like. I thought Griff was a really good player. I think he probably ended up with about six years worth in the end, through Kenny, then through to Hullett, then through to Sir Bobby, of course. famously got a goal against Juventus in the Champions League, albeit by an OG. But I was talking to him, and he was talking. I'll tell you why I was after him was because if anybody's listening tonight or listening this afternoon, BBC Newcastle Ando's away for the weekend. I don't know who's doing their co-commentary this afternoon, but they were looking for ex-players to do co-commentary of the Brighton game on the BBC this afternoon, and I tried to sort Griff out, and he couldn't. He was desperate to go to the game today to do the commentary, but he was a good one. I spoke to John Carver in the week as well, so JC is still around. But yeah, every now and then you see one or two. Ryan Taylor did a bit with the BBC in midweek as well. I mean, there's so many. That's the thing about at Newcastle. I mean, it's like surrounding doors, isn't it? You know, they in and out and in and out and in and out. So many games, so many players, so many different, but all of them, just incredibly fond of the city, fond of the football club. Doesn't matter whether they've kept 10 clubs, 15 clubs, 100 clubs, 200 clubs, 500 clubs. They all feel the same. For those number of games that they played the black and white striped shirt, they absolutely love it. And talking to Andy Griffin, who was a great servant for the football club, just loves it. I think he's a local lad from the Potteries. He played for Stoke City 3 times, including the captain towards the end. But I'm sure if you asked him and pushed him, he probably feels that Newcastle are just as much in his heart as his local club, Stoke City. So yeah, plenty of ex teams, plenty of ex managers, plenty of ex players as well. So yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, it's hopefully we're going to be linking up again, Mick, because you're on the mend, which we know, and it's great to see, and hoping to get some more talkings going up at what is 9 Bar at the minute, but as I say, we're hoping it's going to be Shearer's in the near future, and it'll be good to get back up there.
Absolutely. I mean, we tried 1 or 2, but invariably because of the previous ownership, they just, he wasn't interested. They weren't really interested in helping fans or helping us to try and create. And that's all you're trying to do. You're just trying to help the fans, give the fans an enjoyable night, talking to ex-players. We did the Beardsley one not so long ago. But to talk about people like Andy Griffin and Ryan Taylor, I mean, James Perch we've talked about as well. He's back on the mend as well. He's at Mansfield. But just these sort of, players who, they're not the superstar players necessarily, but they were incredibly valuable for Newcastle United. So the ability to try and get them, to put them out, to allow people to come in and have a chat and have a bit of crack and a bit of talk about the old days, because it's not just about modern day football and 21st century and Premier League this and Premier League that. There've been some great service to Newcastle United over the years, and hopefully we can put 1 or 2 up and let people hear the stories of yesteryear. I mean, I just rattled off that 11 from Brighton and Hove Albion 30 years ago. There'll be people listening to this, Steve, to you and I haven't got a clue who they are. Who's Matty Appleby? Who's Mark Stimpson? Who's Kevin Brock? That's it. Time moves on. So, hopefully we'll put a few nights together and hopefully allow fans the chance to really enjoy that Newcastle United isn't just about what it is now. It's about what it has been over the years.
Henry says, what was your initial thoughts when Keegan said he was going to sell Andy Cole?
Oh, I mean, we were traumatized. I mean, everybody was. It's, dare I say it? I mean, it sounds a bit crass and a little bit glib, but it's a bit like Shane Warne yesterday. That something happens in sport, something happens concerning sport, and it just knocks you for 6. 52 years of age. Shane Warne, passes, and God bless his soul. But that day, getting the news that Andy Cole is leaving, again, it felt like that. It felt like somebody was leaving the family, it was almost like a bereavement, and people descended upon the stalls. KK people might not be old enough to remember this, but he had to, he actually front up Kevin, set outside the stalls, set outside the steps there at the Milburn paddock at the Milburn entrance, and try and convince them that this was the thing to do, and that Keith Gillespie was coming in, and we're doing this and we're doing that, and we will be changing it around. But I mean, if somebody mentioned earlier about your biggest games over your time then, and I talked about Manchester United 5 and Barcelona. If you talk about incidents, so many incidents as well, but the whole sale of Andy Cole was very much in there. It was a huge shock in football, and not just a shock for Newcastle United, for Manchester United as well, and how Alex Ferguson and Kevin Keegan had done the deal, we don't know. But a big story. But they're still happening these days, Steve. There are big stories left, right, and centre.
They are. Top Bobby says, Mick, did Duncan McKenzie jump over mini metros as his party trick?
Duncan McKenzie had two party what's the word? Party tips or whatever. One, but and you have to get it right, Steve. You have to get it right. He didn't just jump over a mini. He jumped from a standing start. So what he used to do was stand like that in front of the mini, and then literally just push himself off and get over the mini and land the other side. His other talking point was throwing a golf ball the length of a football pitch. So he used to stand when he went to Leeds from Forest. They got him. They fronted him up. They got the mini, and then they got the golf ball. And he stood behind the goal at one end of Ellen Road and lobbed a golf ball, and it went the other end of the golf ball, which I'd always thought at the time wasn't particularly spectacular, but jumping over a mini was. But what a player he was! What an absolute genius of a player Duncan McKenzie was.
Tom says, Mick, during your time on BBC Radio Newcastle, what was the worst refereeing decision you've seen? God, I bet you've had a few to go through.
Oh, Lord. Couldn't think. Too many. I can't think of anything that was because actually, to be honest with you, once upon a time back in the day, referees were pretty decent fellas. They were just ordinary fellas. You get one or two bad one now and then, but it didn't get too many. I mean, I remember the famous. I mean, obviously, it didn't involve Newcastle United. Do you remember the famous Stephen Lodge getting pushed over at Arsenal that time? That was quite amusing. But no, I didn't get into too much stories involving referees and Newcastle United.
Yeah. Question for Steve and Mick. Are you both disappointed that Miguel Almiron hasn't been able to show any sign of improvement under Howe's management when he looked very exciting under Benitez, says Mad Mark? I mean, he just hasn't really had a chance to get in, has he?
I just don't think he's. I don't think he's. I'm going to be honest about it, Steve. I just don't think he's good enough. I don't think he's good enough. I thought at the time that he's come from the MLS, whether you like it or not, the standard of the MLS. Yeah, all right. You might get the odd one or two who are going to come in and really hit the Premier League and were good enough. But I just think Almiron, he's. What I like about him, and I think Eddie Howe's talked about him, and I think Steve Bruce talked about him, and I think Rafa, talk about him. His attitude's brilliant. I mean, he's a properly dedicated, properly really determined to try and make a career of himself. He works hard. He comes on. He runs around. He's quite quick. He's got the odd trick, but basically, as I say. His attitude is very good. He's no bother, but he's absolutely no bother. I bet he loves the fact that he's playing at Newcastle United but I just don't think the quality's there. I really just don't think the quality's there. And sometimes that happens with football, and you have to give it time. You have to work on the pit. You have to work on training. You have to work with systems. You have to work with players, and try and hope that in and around better sides and better teams. Somebody might be at the MLS, but it's a bit like a player at championship level or Division 1 level. You can look at a player and you can think, okay, there's a bit of talent there, and that talent can be honed and it can be manoeuvred by better players around them at Premier level. And I think that's probably what they thought with Almiron. They probably thought, okay, his enthusiasm's good. Let's just see if we can't get a player to him. And I just don't think it's ever worked. And I'd be very surprised if come the end of the summer, he probably doesn't end elsewhere and go elsewhere. And with our thanks and with our gratitude, because he was part of a side which was banging its head against a brick wall to try and get results, to try and get moves that create goals and create wins. Couldn't quite do it. So fair play to him, but never really ever thought he was going to be a player.
Who do you think will go down, says Alan? It's a good one, this, because it's a real relegation battle now. I think for me it's a flip of a coin between Brentford and Leeds, Mick. I think Norwich and Watford are doomed. What do you think? Do you think Everton could be the other favourite?
I can remember, was it 10 days ago, 2 weeks ago, 10 days, probably 10 days, probably 2 weeks. I remember we both said Norwich and Watford. You went Leeds and I went Brentford. But I have to say, even though I've just seen Brentford beaten by Newcastle, but I've seen Leeds beaten again, and more importantly, I've seen Bielsa gone as well. So, and I genuinely thought at the time, I think I said to you, I just thought Bielsa and Leeds, I just thought they had too much. I thought Brentford would sooner but later just keep going and keep spiraling, and before you know it, they're out. I think it is down to those two. I would still settle for Brentford because I just don't think they haven't quite got that quality. But I do think now Leeds United are really, really in peril. I don't know this new coach, American, who was at Leipzig. He's got to come in. He's got to change it. They've got injury problems. If Brentford through Ericsson and Tony can get themselves fit and doing things, who knows? Who knows? My money would still be on Brentford along with Watford and Norwich. But I agree with what you said 2 weeks ago. I think Leeds now are getting increasingly worried. Yeah,
I think so as well. It's going to be interesting to see whether Marsh can have them marching on together. Life Goal says, should Jamal Lewis stay or be sold in the summer?
Jamal Lascelles?
Jamal Lewis.
Jamal Lewis. I mean, there's another strange scenario. If you remember at one point he was all set to go to Liverpool. He could have been in a different world. He could have been Liverpool's regular left back come left wing back. He could be a Premier League player. He could be a League Cup player. He could be a European player. He could be this, that, and the other. All of a sudden, the Liverpool deal falls through. He goes to Newcastle. He started well at Newcastle. I'd seen him previously at Norwich and thought he was a good player at Norwich. And then he hit the wall again. Now, obviously, he's out of favour. And I think at this minute in time, I think you would have to say he's another one who would be surplus to apply to appliments. I think a lot of it depends. A lot of it will depend upon what Newcastle did do in the summer, Steve. And if they spend money, if they splash the cash, then we'll be very interested to see, because it won't just be Lewis. It won't just be Almiron. It won't be X, Y, and there could be all sorts of players. There could be some quite prominent players who might need to leave because there are players coming to the door. I talked about David Kelly earlier, as somebody, Gavin Peacock, that because of the movement through Sir John and Freddie at Newcastle back in the 90s, suddenly people were surplus to requirements. And what was interesting was with the Amanda Staveley conversation in the week, for the first time, and I've talked to you about this before, about how much I'd wanted to hear a little bit more from the ownership about what the plans are, etc., etc. And I know he didn't say an awful lot, Amanda Staveley, and one or two things were a little bit naive. One or two things I think were unfair on him. But clearly what we did see was this line about he and Mehrdad Guddusi being interim co-chief executive, and that sooner or later there looks as if there's going to be a shift change in terms of a new chief executive, that PIF could be more prominent. So we don't really know exactly what's going to happen. We kept hearing the phrase global brand, and clearly a global brand with Newcastle United. So I'm absolutely intrigued to find out whether this is softly, whether they will move it in the summer, whether they will be more convinced by training, the stadia, whatever. There's all sorts of questions all of a sudden, just because of a very quite small 10, 15 minutes with Amanda Staveley on Wednesday, Thursday, whatever it was. Very interesting, I thought.
Very interesting indeed, yeah. Do you think Rafa Benitez will get another top job as life goals?
I don't think so. I think I said when he was talked about with Leeds United, or even mentioned here with a possible director of football, which again is non-existent now because Dan Ashworth. And there's another one going back to issues about Newcastle United. Again, we hear this week that Dan Ashworth might not be around for a long time, and that his garden leave might be the rest of the year. So, where's the director of football? Where's the chief executive in terms of what do we do in the summer? Do we move players, etc., etc.? But going back to Rafa, Dan Ashworth is a relatively young man. I don't see Rafa being somebody who wants to be a director of football. And I just think that it gets to the stage where, you look at Roy Hodgson. Roy Hodgson looks like a fella who probably, if he could be asked again, should he have taken the Watford job, he might just have said, shouldn't have done it. But the blood is in there. Football is in their blood. Steve Bruce is another one. He may well be saying to himself now, I shouldn't have bothered with West Brom. I should have just cut it and gone. That's it. End of football. Now, is Rafa going to do the same as well? It's a young man's game all of a sudden. It's a very different game, football, compared to what it was. There's the complexities of it. There's the politics of it. There's all sorts of issues. And I just think modern day footballers have to be different. You watch Eddie Howe today having to deal with, journalists asking him about Ukraine and Russia. I mean, the Steve Bruces, the Roy Hodgsons, the Rafa Benitezes of this world don't want anything to do with that whatsoever.
It's something which is going to run that. But Eddie Howe always holds himself with absolute decorum. It's an absolute pleasure to see him getting interviewed. I've got to be perfectly honest. I thoroughly enjoy watching him deflect things. He's very professional. Okay, Brighton at home today, 3:00 kickoff. No TV coverage, as we know. So you need to be there or wait for Match of the Day in Sky. I'll be at the Dog and Parrot with Malcolm at 1:00 and 5:45 free entry. Get yourself down if you want to hear Malcolm and meet Malcolm. Callum Wilson, Kieran Trippier, both out. ASM was training yesterday, but we don't know whether he's going to make it into the starting lineup. Many of us expect him to start on the bench. Matt Ritchie's still out as well, which was being confirmed as a knee problem, but he is expected to start training again next week. As for Brighton, well, Adam Webster isn't going to feature today, but Adam Lallana may. Of course, Mick touched on it earlier. Graham Potter's side have suffered 3 successive Premier League defeats without scoring. So they're not coming into this on the crest of a wave. They're coming in on the crest of a slump. They have had a decent away record this season, and of course have won games at relegation rivals such as Burnley, Brentford, Everton and Watford. Brighton are showing their support for the Ukraine disaster and crisis by wearing a yellow and blue third kit today. And the idea behind that is that they're publicising a scheme which will donate profits from the sale of those strips to the British Red Cross. Okay. Martin Atkinson is back on Tyneside today. The West Yorkshire referee has already been to St James's Park and overseen 2 defeats, one against West Ham, one against Man City, both 4-2 and 4-0. VAR, which has been switched on the last couple of games, is Lee Mason. So, how do you see this going, Mick?
I think it's a tough one. Really do think it's a tough one. But we're confident. You know, that word I've just used about confidence. We're a confident team. There is absolutely no reason why they should go out today and beat Brighton and Hove Albion. Yes, we've talked about the bogey team. Yes, we've talked about their away form is very good. They've only lost at Villa. They've only lost at Manchester United. But their recent form is not good. I think what's again working in Newcastle's favour is the fact that we've had back-to-back away games. We've got 3 away games after today. There's a huge opportunity today for 52,000 if they ever need it, and they never need it, but to really raise the roof, properly raise the roof. I've looked at the wall flags today. You've got Gallagher End, you've got Lees's End, you've got NUFC, you've got Howay the lads. I mean, it looks like it's ready. It's ready to go today. And, you know, the fans can play their part. But more importantly, it's about this 11. I can't believe for a minute he'll even touch it. I think he'll leave it as it is. But he might have on the option. He could possibly have the option of ASM. That would be interesting. Chris Wood, you would desperately want to try and get a goal from, and I think goals is the problem. I think if we're going to win the game, I think we're going to need to win it either 1-0 or 2-1. But I don't think we'll lose the game. And you know, this isn't something I ever really said, and nothing I was ever really happy about in terms of just drawing a game, particularly at St James's. But I don't think it's the worst thing in the world. The priority is not losing. The priority is another point. It's to making life difficult for Brentford, for Everton, for Leeds, to Burnley, to Watford, to Norwich, to getting increasingly closer to staying in the Premier League, because we have the biggest carrot dangling that Newcastle United Football Club have ever had. We have a carrot dangling that is enormous, courtesy of this ownership. If we can stay where we are, stay in the Premier League, there could be big times ahead. So don't worry about the short term. Don't worry about needing to win 3. Don't worry about Chris Wood needing a hat-trick against Brighton and beating them 5-0. I'll take 1-0. I'll take 1-1. I'll take 2-1. I'll take anything tight. I'll just take the fact that we don't lose the game and we get that little bit closer towards the Premier League.
Mick, as always, pleasure to spend time with you on a Saturday morning. Look forward to seeing you next week, mate. I'll be in touch about these tokens. Take care, pal.
Enjoy the game. See ya. Bye.
Thanks.
Critics attack. It feels like I've been talking to myself again. But it's the only way you're ever gonna learn. You look back and it's all in the past.